let's go ahead and start. I want to pick up on page 409 in the 10th edition, and 409 in the 11th edition, 484 in the 10th edition. The big long paragraph at the end of, pardon? Yeah, go ahead. Big long paragraph on 409, where Sardi and his father are making their way down what we would call a driveway toward the big house of Major Despain. And we get Sardi's thoughts. It's the lines in italics. It's big as a courthouse. They are safe from him. People whose lives are a part of this peace and dignity are beyond his touch. He no more to them than a buzzing wasp. Okay? He's thinking about his father. Dad's a bug. Okay? Capable of stinging for a little moment, but that's all. The spell of this peace and dignity rendering even the barns and stable and cribs, which belong to it, impervious to the puny flames he might contrive. And then the narrator says this, the peace and joy ebbing for an instant. That is, while he's thinking this, he's suddenly filled with a sense of peace and a sense of joy or happiness. Why? He can't touch them. But then what happens? It's like the moment's gone. And that peace and joy, like an ocean wave, ebbs away. The tide goes back out. As he looked again at the stiff black back, the stiff and implacable limp of the figure which was not dwarfed by the house for the reason that it had never looked big anywhere. So his father doesn't look small compared to the house because his father never looked big. What does that mean? I mean, literally it means he never looked big. Figuratively, what does it mean? He's just a small little man. In Abner's mind, inconsequential, insignificant, like a bug. Okay? And the boy remarks how the absolutely undeviating course which his father held and saw the stiff foot. So they're walking down, and the boy's slightly behind and to the side of his father, and he sees where his father's walking, and he sees like 20 feet away. There's a pile of fresh horse manure. And he's like making a beeline for it. And he's thinking, he could take one step to the side and not step, but no, not my father. Why? Because he's implacable. And he thinks, it ebbed only for a moment, though he could not have thought this into words either. Walking on in the spell of the house, which he could even want, but without envy, without sorrow, certainly never with that ravening and jealous rage, which unknown to him, that is unknown to Sardi, to the son, walked in the iron-like black coat before him. Notice now what inhabits those clothes that are moving before him. A ravening and jealous rage. He's no longer even described as a person. This is just what? Fury. This is just fury moving in front of him. What does it take to set off fury? Have you ever known somebody who's got such a short fuse? You say the slightest thing, and the person just blows up. I think we probably all have, okay? It doesn't take much, right? I mean, I've known people. Yeah, I'm not going to go there. I was going to get really personal. I'm deciding not to. I know people who just the wrong thing. It could be a single word, and it's like Armageddon. Nuclear, and everybody's gone. And he thinks, Sardi thinks maybe he will feel it too. What's the it? The peace, the majesty, the glory, the wonder, the awe of this house. Maybe he will feel it too. That joy, that peace, that seeing that gave Sardi for a moment. Maybe it will even change him now from what maybe he couldn't help but be. It's like maybe Jesus is going to come out of that house, smack him upside the head, and he's going to suddenly, miraculously be changed. What kind of thought is this on Sardi's part? Is it realistic? No. Totally unrealistic. Quote unquote conversion experiences don't happen like that unless like are St. Paul or something. Okay? He steps in the horse manure, Abner does. They go up onto the porch, bangs on the door, servant opens it, get out of my way, walks in, there's this beautiful cream-colored rug, and he steps right on it. Mrs. Despain comes down, dressed beautifully, but she has an apron on, and we're told she has flour and such on her hands. Why? Are they so loaded that she has people to do her cooking for her? No, they're not. We're told she was making bread or cake, according to the description. Okay? And she says, please go away, Major Despain's not home, will you please go away? And his father stops. He agrees to go away. What does he do? He's planted his feet on that rug. One of those feet has horse dung sticking to his boot. And the foot that doesn't have the horse dung, he pivots on and he does this. Why? Because he has a limp. It's like he can't lift that leg properly. And he just drags that foot around and he inscribes a half circle of brown on this beautiful cream-colored rug. They leave. They stop and turn around, look back at the house, page 410, about 3/4 of the way down, the end of that second to the last paragraph. And he says, pretty and white, ain't it? That's sweat. What does he mean? What built that house? Sweat, work, labor. Nigger sweat. And then he adds something. Maybe it ain't white enough yet to suit him. Maybe he wants to make some white sweat in with it. Abner is equating himself with former slaves, or with slaves, if you want. Okay? In doing that, is he saying we're all in the struggle together? No, not at all. He's just saying it doesn't matter to the owner of this house whose sweat goes into the building of it, or into the perfecting or beautifying, however you want to put it. Okay? So they go on home. And the mother's doing the washing. And a man comes up on a horse with a rug. And he tells him to clean it. He says that this rug came from France. Okay? And Abner says, about stanza, paragraph 51, page 411. If I thought enough of a rug to have to get it all the way from France, I wouldn't keep it where folks coming in would have to tromp on it. Excuse me, that's not Abner, that's one of the sisters, one of the daughters. And the mother says, Abner, let me do it. Why?
Because she knows he's going to burn it.
She wants to do it properly. Who probably usually does the wash? The mother or the daughters? Sexist? Maybe. When is it set? The 1890s. What are the two sons and the father doing during the day? Maybe while the mother and the daughters are doing the wash and doing Well, there's really not any cleaning to do because they live in a shack, okay? But the cooking. They're out there sharecropping this property. We don't know, this is just an estimate. We don't know how big the property is, but he's got to till, plant, reap, however many acres, and then he has an own little pot that he also has to till, plant, and reap so that he can provide food for them. She said, let me do it. I'll take care of it. Go back and get dinner. I'll tend to this. So what does he do? He gets a big old rock and he gets some lye soap. Lye is an acid, right? I mean, strong acid. It'll burn your skin if you pour liquid lye on you. If you have enough, it'll melt your body. Serial murderers have been known to use tubs of lye to dissolve bodies, okay? So he uses lye soap and a stone. This is like washing clothes in a river. You get a stone, you rub the clothing against another stone, and it helps get the material, the stains and stuff out. What else does it do? It makes the clothing not last very long, okay? So he gets it done. And he takes it back. And we're told, that the rug is hanging there before they take it back. And let's see here. Skip a bunch. Middle of 412. This is paragraph is a number. 61, 2, paragraph 63, I think. Okay. The man who dropped off the rug before is back. You must realize you have ruined that rug. Wasn't there anybody here, any of your women? He ceased, shaking, a boy watching him. The older brother leaning now in the stable door, chewing, blinking slowly and steadily at nothing apparently. Why is the older man shaking? Have you ever been so angry that you're just kind of jittery? That's how he is. It cost $100. But you never had $100. You never will. So I'm going to charge you 20 bushels of corn against your crop. So, however much he has to produce here, he's now got to get 20 bushels of corn additionally from the plot of land he has been, as part of the sharecropper's contract, that he is farming for himself and his family. Okay? Let's say he was hoping to get 30 bushels of corn from this little bit. Well, now 20 bushels of that has got to go to Major Despain. So he's only going to get 10 to provide for his family. That's just numbers out of the air. Okay? He says, that won't keep Mrs. Despain quiet, but maybe it will teach you to wipe your feet before you enter her house again. Notice, her house, not my house. It's my wife's house. It's my wife's rug. Okay? Then the boy says, Pep, you done the best you could. Did he? Did he really do the best he could? No. He wanted it done different. Why didn't he wait to tell you how? What did he tell him to do? Literally. Clean the rug. That's what he said. Okay? So, that was Wednesday. It's now Saturday. They're back in town. The boy follows his father. And where are we? We're like at the beginning of the story. We have a new justice of the peace. We have a new trial setting. Only this one isn't somebody bringing charges against Abner. This is Abner bringing charges against Major Despain. And the boy says, he ain't done it, he ain't burned. Go back to the wagon. Justice of the peace. Burnt? Do I understand this rug was burned too? What's the boy talking about? He ain't burnt no barns. He didn't get to finish his sentence. Okay? He's implying he hasn't burned anything yet. The justice of the peace, because they're talking about a rug, he's assuming the boy's talking about the rug was burned, like lit on fire, burned. It was burned by the lie, but different kind of burning. Do I understand this rug was burned too? Does anybody here claim it was? In other words, is Major Despain saying that? So, tells the boy again, go back to the wagon. And the justice of the peace says, and you claim 20 bushels of corn is too high for the damage you did to the rug. Notice Abner's defense. He brought the rug to me, said he wanted the tracks washed out. I washed the tracks out and brought the rug back to him. Case closed. The defense rests. Why? I did what he told me to do. Did he? Did he remove the horse dung from the rug? Yes, he did. But the justice says, but you didn't carry the rug back to him in the same condition it was in before you made the tracks on it. Did Major Despain literally say, clean the rug and return it to me in the condition it was before you made the tracks on it? Literally, no, he didn't. He said, clean the rug. I cleaned the rug. The only problem is, whereas the rug maybe used to have a nap, thickness of the fibers from the foundation of the rug to the tallest length of the fibers, might have been 1.5 inches or 2 inches. Now, where those tracks were, it's like 1/4 of an inch. So the rug isn't the same level. It's not the same plushness all the way around. You look at it and you go, well, who the hell did that? It's pretty clear it's damaged. Notice, Abner doesn't have a response to that question. You decline to answer that, Mr. Snopes? I'm going to find against you, Mr. Snopes. I'm going to find that you were responsible for the injury to Major Despain's rug and hold you liable for it. Okay. Remember, Abner is the one who brought these charges. Abner is the one who called for the justice of the peace and a trial. Okay? So, but 20 bushels of corn seems a little high for a man in your circumstances to have to pay. What does he mean by that wonderfully vague euphemism, a man in your circumstances? You can't afford that. Why? That's, again, kind of euphemistic, down to brass tacks. He is dirt poor. What does that mean? He's too poor to own dirt. Okay? So he says, Major Despain claims it cost $100. All right? October corn will be worth about 50 cents. That's 50 cents a bushel. I figure that if Major Despain can stand a $95 loss on something he paid cash for, you can stand a $5 loss. You haven't earned it. So Major Despain wanted to charge him 20 bushels. 20 bushels times 50 cents equals $10. But he says, I'm not going to charge you that. I'm going to charge you 10 bushels times 50 cents or $5. Is this fair justice? Is this justice blind? No, it's not. If it were justice blind, what would Abner have to pay? Literally, $100. I mean, this thing cost him $100. It is ruined. Instead, Abner's only got to cough up $5. Okay, so that's 10 bushels of corn. That still might be an awful lot for the little bit of land he has. What is the justice of the peace showing Abner? This is mercy. He's saying, you will never be able to come up with 20 bushels. 10? Yeah, I think you'd probably do that. Okay? Court adjourned. So they get ready to leave. And they go back home. They get some more oil. They reach home, bottom of 414. eat supper by lamplight, and the boy then goes outside and sits on the doorstep. He watches the night come and get dark and everything. He's listening to the birds and the frogs, and he hears his mother. Abner, no, no, oh God, Abner. And he gets up and runs inside. He doesn't know what's happening. And he sees the altered light through the door where a candle stub now burned in a bottleneck on the table. And his father, still in the hat and coat, the same one he was wearing that morning, he never took them off, okay, empties the reservoir of the lamp back into the 5-gallon kerosene can from which it had been filled. Okay, so they have a kerosene lamp with a wick, and he's taken the lamp top off, and he's got the lamp itself, which still has some kerosene in it, and he pours it back into the 5-gallon container that he has. Okay? While the mother tugs at him, trying to stop him, and we're told flings her back, not savagely or viciously, just hard. So he throws her to the ground, but not savagely or viciously. I don't know about you, but in my book, throwing somebody to the ground, whether up here it's not savage or vicious, it's vicious and savage. Okay, and she catches the wall, and he tells Abner tells Sardi, go to the barn, get that can of oil we were oiling the wagon with. He doesn't move. And then he speaks. What? What are you? Go get that oil. And the boy runs. Running outside the house toward the stable, the old habit. So, he's running, and the narrator kind of freezes time and tells us what this means, what this tableau, this image means. The old habit, the old blood, which he had not been permitted to choose for himself, which had been bequeathed him willy-nilly, and which had run for so long, and who knew where, battening on what of outrage and savagery and lust, before it came to him. What's the old habit? What has Sardi done? Apparently, again and again and again and again. They've moved 12 times, at least, in the 10 years he's been alive. What is being implied? Every time they've had to move, why have they had to move? Louder. Because of his father. Keep going. What does his father have a habit of doing when he gets angry? Or, let me rephrase that. When his anger boils over, because he's always angry. He's like Hulk, always angry. He's burned barns. And I think the implication is at least 12 times. And it's kind of being implied every time he does. Sardi, go get that can. Time to go have a barn burning. And so this is the old habit. But then we get the thing about the blood. Notice what Sardi thinks. It's kind of telling us what Sardi thinks. I didn't get to choose to be born into this family. None of us do, right? Nobody asks us before we're quote unquote, conceived, do you want to be born to this family? Because I'll bet some of us in here would go, no, I want to be born in that family. I want to be born in that family. And he thinks, I could keep on. Now, when he thinks I could keep on, meaning I could keep on running, where is he? He hasn't reached the barn yet. I could run on and never look back. Never need to see his face again. Only I can't. Why can't he? Why can't he just keep running at this point? We go back to that opening paragraph and we're told about that old fierce pool of blood. If he keeps running, what's going to happen at this point? Think of this charging cord as being plugged into me, and the other side is being plugged into Abner. What happens the farther and farther away I get? It's like a rope. That's the old fierce pull of blood. It ties him to Abner, and he realizes, I can only get so far. The rusted can in his hand now. So when he's thinking this, he gets to the barn, he opens the door, he has the can, and that's when he says, I can't. And he makes his way back to the shack. He gives it to his father. Why? What happened the last time when Abner burned Mr. Harris's barn? He sent a messenger, right? What did the messenger say? Anybody remember?
Wood and hay can burn.
Wood and hay can burn. What? He says, wood and hay can burn. Aren't you even going to send a warning? Why did he send a warning before?
So you can get the livestock out.
Possibly. So Mr. Harris can get his livestock out? Possibly. Maybe he has former slaves, sleeping in the barn. We don't know. But he gave a warning. He's not giving a warning this time. This time the father didn't strike him. The hand came even faster than the blow had. The same hand which had set the can on the table with almost excruciating care, flashing from the can toward him too quick for him to follow it, gripping him by the back of his shirt. So he has the can that Sardi has handed him, and he sets it down and then grabs Sardi so fast he can't get away from it. Why does he grab him? He's holding him and he tells his older brother, empty the can into the big one. Go on, I'll catch up. Better time up. Do like I told you. And then he takes Sardi to his wife and says, hold him. And the aunt makes a startled movement. Okay? The wife, Lenny, and the aunt, Lizzie, are sitting on the bed together. And the aunt, Sardi's mother's sister, gotta get my things correct in my brain, is holding Lenny around the shoulders. Why? Is she trying to hold her back? I don't think so. She's comforting her. She knows what's happening. She's been there before. And when he says, you better hold him, she thinks, okay, Lizzie thinks, Abner's talking to her, not you. Lenny, take hold of him. I want to see you do it. Why? Is this a command? Is this the male patriarchal society, making the woman do something she doesn't want to do? Maybe. It's a little more than that. It is him kind of forcing her to choose. Choose what? That old fierce pull of blood. She's not bloodline related to him. She's how related to him? Marriage. See, marriage, my opinion, you may totally disagree and that's fine. Marriage is thicker than bloodline. Why? You choose that. You don't choose the family you're in. But you do choose that other person. And that's kind of like, screw you. Think, Romeo and Juliet, right? They each love each other. Their families hate each other. And they're like, the families. Let's go. Hold him. You'll hold him better than that because his mother grabs Sardi by the wrist. Like, okay, I've got him. No, you hold him better than that or he's going to... If he gets loose, don't you know what he's going to do? He will go up yonder. Meaning, he'll tell Major Despain. And what will happen if he tells Major Despain? We can jump a little bit ahead in the story. I'll die. Your son will die. If you don't hold him, what is Abner putting on her?
Pressure.
What kind? How much? If we die, whose fault is it? It's your fault. Kind of twisted, right? It's a kind of twisted thing. Oh, I'll go ahead and say, bad people do. If you don't love me and you don't do X, Y, Z, then it's your fault. No. Who's the agent? Who's going to do the burning? Not Lenny. Abner is. He's just trying to slough his guilt off onto her. I'll hold him. See you do it. And he leaves. And the boy struggles. Let me go, let me go. The aunt, let him go. If he don't go before God, I'm going up there myself. If he doesn't warn them, I will. Mother, don't you see I can't? Why? What kind of position is she put in? Saving her husband's life, protecting her child. There's that old fierce pull of blood, because her son is her blood. Don't you see I can't? Sorry, no, help me, Lizzie, And the boy runs. Okay? He gets to Major Despain's, bangs on the door. The servant answers, and he says, barn. And then Major Despain shows up. What? Barn? Notice. Barn, exclamation mark. Despain shows up. Barn? It's a question. What do you mean, barn? Does Sardi go, get my breath. My father is on his way with my older brother. They've got a bunch of kerosene. They're going to burn your barn down tonight. No, he just says, barn. Why? It's pretty clear what that means. Go to the barn. Yes, barn. Catch him. Sardi runs. So Sardi starts running back down that long avenue, that long driveway. Major Despain gets on his horse. He goes galloping down it because the barn's not right next door to the house. Okay? And Sardi jumps off the side of the road because he doesn't want to get ridden over. And he runs. And we're told, almost the exact middle of the page, 416. The horse thundered past and on for an instant in furious silhouette against the stars, the tranquil early summer night sky, which even before the shape of the horse and rider vanished, strained abruptly and violently upward. A long swirling roar, incredible and soundless, blotting the stars. And he, Sardi, springing up again and into the road, running again, knowing it was too late. Too late for what? And where is he running? Is he running towards the barn? Yet still running even after he heard the shot. And an instant later, 2 shots. Pausing now without knowing he had ceased to run, crying, Pep, Pep. Running again before he knew he had begun to run. Stumbling, tripping over something, and thinking, Father. At midnight. So when did the previous scene happen? We don't know. All we do know is he had been sitting outside on the doorstep and he watches the night accomplish. That means it's fully dark. So he's out there probably at dusk, when you can still see. It's not dark yet until it gets dark. It's Mississippi, mid-May. Okay? So the sun is probably setting 6 o'clock or so. Maybe 6:30. Now it's midnight. 5 hours have gone by. And he's sitting on the crest of a hill. This is set in the 1890s. If he sees any light, what kind of light will he see? Other than the moon and stars. There's no electric light. Not in Mississippi. Lanterns maybe, which are going to be oil. You can see candlelight maybe. Maybe if there's a house nearby, he sees light from a window, but from a candle or a kerosene lamp. But there's no electric lighting. So he's on a hillside, and we're told. He did not know it was midnight. He did not know how far he'd come. But there was no glare behind him now. And he sat now, his back toward what he had called home for 4 days. Why the little detail, there is no glare behind him now. What would the glare be from? The barn burning. Now, it's kind of hard for us to imagine it because most of us haven't been in this kind of situation. But imagine you're out in the middle of the country where there's no electric lighting anywhere. And you're on a hillside, you're at the top of a hill, so you have a good wide vantage all the way around. Okay? And there's been a barn burning. That's going to be pretty bright. Until when? One of two things happens. Maybe one of three things. One, the fire gets put out. Okay? Two, the fire burns out on its own naturally, which is going to take several hours. Three, you've gone so far away from where that barn was, you can no longer see the fire. Any one of those three is a possibility. I kind of think it's the third one. He has run and run and run and run and run and run and run. He is miles, and I don't mean 2 or 3 or 4. I mean he's 8 or 9 or 10 miles away. He just kept running. And now he stops. His face toward the dark woods which he would enter when breath was strong again, small, shaking steadily in the chill darkness, hugging himself into the remainder of his thin, rotten shirt. Again, it's mid-May, so it's still chilly in the evenings. The grief and despair now no longer terror and fear, but just grief and despair. Earlier, first paragraph, the grief and despair were caused by what? The fierce pull of blood. But now there's no terror and fear. Terror and fear inspired by his father beating him? I don't think that's it. The terror and fear of the relationship. How many of you do not want to grow up to be like your father or mother? Some of you probably don't. Or a grandparent. You look at somebody and go, I don't want to be like that. Okay? And then you find, you turn 60 and you're going, damn, doing the same things. Better change. That's the fear and terror he no longer has. Why? The pull has been severed. Now it's just grief and despair. Grief, his father's dead. His brother's dead. Despair, how old is he? He's 10. What's he going to do the rest of his life? How's he going to make his way in the world? He's a 10-year-old kid in the early 1890s with no family. I mean, yes, he has family. He has a mom and 3 sisters and an aunt. Is he going to go back to them? No. No, that's why his back is turned to what he once called home. Once called home for 4 days. And he thinks, Father, my father, he was brave. He cries out loud. He was. He was in the war. He was in Colonel Sartor's cavalry. The guy he is named after, Colonel Sartoris. Now, he thinks he was in that colonel's cavalry, not knowing that his father had gone to that war a private in the fine old European sense. Meaning, he'd gone to that war for what purpose? To fight for the great Southern cause? Nope. To fight for the great Colonel Sartoris and thereby have whatever glory the colonel earned, kind of some of it might spill down on him? Nope. He went for what reason? To get what he could out of the war. To steal what he could. That's why earlier we were told, we had the mention of Abner having a string of horses. Captured, he called them. Stolen is what they were, right? The slow constellations wheeled on. The boy sits there, and the planet moves, and it looks like the stars move. It would be dawn and then sunup after a while, and he would be hungry. But that would be tomorrow, and now he was just cold, and walking would cure that. His breathing was easier now. He's been there for a while. He had been out of breath. And he decided to get up and go on, and he found he'd been asleep. And it's almost dawn. The night was almost over. He could hear the whippoorwills, singing their morning rising song. They're everywhere now. We had the whippoorwills earlier that evening. As dusk descends, he hears them. He got up, a little stiff. Walking would cure that too, as it would the cold. And soon there would be the sun. He goes down the hill toward the dark woods, within which the liquid silver voices of the birds called unceasing. The rapid and urgent beating of the urgent and choiring heart of the late spring night. The choiring heart, singing like in a choir, even though it's spelled differently. Okay? He did not look back. Why? There's nothing back there. He's just going on. Okay? The old fierce pull of blood, in one sense it's broken. In another sense it's not. Why? Because he's still related to him. There are descendants tonight of Hitler who still, have to. They don't go by the last name Hitler, but they still they have that part that they have to come to terms with. Right? Sardi's going to have the same kinds of problems. Okay, turn to. I hope you've read. What is it called? Flannery O'Connor's Good Man is Hard to Find. We were actually supposed to start drama today, according to syllabus. That's how far behind we are, but I'm not concerned about it. So we're going to start 15 minutes, 12, 13 minutes. Flannery O'Connor's Good Man is Hard to Find. One thing first. Barn burning. Who's the protagonist? Who's the main sufferer? Who's the person that we are meant to identify with? It's Sardi, right? It's the boy. Who's the antagonist? That's pretty clear. That's his father. Okay. In A Good Man is Hard to Find, that's what this abbreviation is. A good man is hard to find. I want you to ask yourselves, who's the protagonist and who's the antagonist? Okay. This is on page 361 in the 11th edition, and not there. Where'd it go? That's the end of it. And 427 in the 10th edition. Look at the setting also. Now, I think it's safe to assume that it's supposed to be set at the time that it was written, 1953. Okay. One, they have automobiles, so it could be any time really in the first quarter, second quarter of the 20th century. But I think it's probably safe to assume it's 1953. We know it's post-World War II because we're going to have a reference to Europe and World War II and such. Okay? So look how it begins. The grandmother didn't want to go to Florida. She wanted to visit some of her connections in East Tennessee, and she was seizing at every chance to change Bailey's mind. Bailey was the son she lived with, her only boy. He was sitting on the edge of his chair at the table, bent over the orange sports section of the Journal. It's the Atlanta Constitution and Journal, right? Atlanta newspaper. And she says, "Look here, Bailey. See here, read this." So he's sitting on the edge of his chair, sitting at the table, reading the newspaper, and she stands there, hand on hip with the newspaper, and doing this, waving it in his face. What does he do? He ignores her. Totally. Here this fellow calls himself the misfit, is loose from the federal pen, headed toward Florida. You read here when it says he did to these people. Just you read it. Wouldn't take my children any direction with a criminal like that, and Lucinda couldn't answer my conscience. He's headed towards Florida. The implication is we're headed towards Florida. We shouldn't go to Florida. Where does she want to go, we've been told? She wants to go to East Tennessee, where she has connections, okay? Family and friends. Notice Bailey doesn't look up. So he's ignoring her, so she turns to his wife, sitting across the table. And we get her description. Young woman in slacks whose face was as broad and innocent as a cabbage. Ladies, is that how you want to be described in a story? With a face as broad and innocent as a cabbage? I mean, you know, a cabbage can be like this big. But looking like a cabbage? Really? That, by the way, is how she's going to be described twice. She's never named. The grandmother isn't named. Bailey is named. 2 of the children are named. And the serial killer's 2 accomplices are named. But the grandmother is never named. The mother is never named. The baby is never named. And the serial killer is never named other than his nickname. Okay? The misfit. So she says, children have been to Florida before. You ought to take them somewhere else for a change so they would see different parts of the world be broad. They've never been in East Tennessee. Like, ooh, going to East Tennessee is going to make you broad and a world traveler and cultured. That's kind of what she's implying. Notice, children's mother doesn't seem to hear. She's tuning her out. The mother is tuning out the grandmother. The grandmother is kind of like, if you're familiar with the old Peanuts cartoons that would be on TV, when the kids are at school and the teacher's talking, what do the children hear? Whack, 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 whack. That's it. It's not words. Okay? So, we get introduced to the wonderful, beautiful, well-behaved children. 8-year-old boy named John Wesley, stocky child with glasses. Stocky is probably a euphemism. He's heavy set or fat. Okay? And he says, if you don't want to go to Florida, why don't you stay at home? The little girl, June Star, says she wouldn't stay at home and be queen for a day. The grandmother responds, yes, what would you do if this fellow, this misfit, caught you? John Wesley, I'd smack his face. June Star, she wouldn't stay at home for $1 million. Afraid she'd miss something. She has to go everywhere we go. Okay, so somebody describe these children to me. Ashton, you've got a look on your face.
They're very aggravating.
Very aggravating. That's a very euphemistic way of putting it. Somebody else. They're what? Stubborn. It's not as negative as I'm looking for. They're brats. These are brats. How many of you have a grandmother? You all did at one point. Okay? Everybody did. Okay? How many have a grandmother that is somewhat in your life? You see her every now and then, maybe. Some of you do. How many of you would dare to speak? Maybe I'm totally, because I'm 60. If I had spoken like that to my grandmother, either of them, if they didn't smack me, my parents would have. My dad would have literally taken off his belt and come here, off in the bedroom and whack. What does this show us about these children? They're ill-mannered. They don't have good manners. This is not how you speak to your grandparent. Some would say this isn't how you speak to an elder, someone older than you. We can, debate that. All right? So, the next morning, now the grandmother doesn't want to go to Florida, right? Next morning, she's the first one in the car. Showing us what? June Star is exactly right about the grandmother. The family doesn't get to do anything without her. Okay, so if your grandmother was like this, might you be a little bit like June Star and John Wesley? So she's first went in the car. She has her suitcase there. She has her blankety blank cat with her in a basket. She doesn't want to leave the cat behind, afraid it's going to, set off the gas in the house or, miss her or something. And we get where everybody sits. Bailey's in the front seat driving. His nameless cabbage-faced wife is sitting next to him holding the baby. Why? No car seats at this time. Car seats didn't come around until the 1980s. Literally. Used to drive with our family, 5 kids. At one point, my dad had a little TR, a little convertible car. My 4 brothers and sisters in the back seat. Me in the front seat with mom. Dad, driving. We'd go for long drives and stuff. So, June Star on one side, John Wesley on the other, grandmother in the middle, in the back seat. We're told what the odometer reads. Why? It's one of those little details authors like to include to make the story real. If you've ever gone on a long road trip, okay, maybe you don't. When I go on a road trip, I look at the odometer. In fact, what I usually do now, because you can do it, you couldn't do this in the 1950s, reset the trip meter. Set it to 0 to see how many miles we go. Even if it's something I've done many times, it's just ingrained into me. Okay? Used to drive a car that the gas gauge didn't work. So I would take note of the odometer reading so I'd know how many miles I had driven. Because I knew about how many miles to the gallon that thing got. And when I'd get close to 250 miles, I knew it was time to fill up. Because the gas gauge always said empty, no matter what, all right? So, they start driving. So notice, where do they start from? Where's the story set at the beginning? Atlanta, Georgia. They leave Atlanta, okay? Page 363, paragraph 14, John Wesley. Let's go through Georgia fast so we don't have to look at it much. Grandmother. If I were a little boy, I wouldn't talk about my native state that way. Tennessee has the mountains, and Georgia has the hills. John Wesley. Tennessee is just, I laugh every time I read this. Tennessee is just a hillbilly dumping ground. And Georgia's a lousy state, too. How old is he? He's 8. What do those 2 statements tell us about John Wesley? What kind of outlook on life do they betray? Man, this kid is jaded. This kid is cynical. For being 8 years old, what's he essentially said in modern language? Life sucks. Put it on the bumper sticker, and then you die. I mean, that's kind of his attitude towards life. Okay? Grandmother, in my time, children are more respectful of their native states and their parents and everything else. What does she mean, in my time? When I was your age. Okay? People did right then. Oh, look at the cute little pickaninny. And there's a little black kid standing in a doorway, half naked. No pants on. Wouldn't that make a nice picture? And they all turn and look. And notice, the little boy waves. Why? Why that little detail? What is that telling us about the little boy? What kind of person waves? Someone who hates life? Someone who's going to give you the finger? No. This little kid is happy. Not happy because he's standing there half naked. He's just a little kid, and he's happy. Okay? June Star, he didn't have any breeches on. Grandmother probably didn't have any. Little niggers in the country don't have things like we. Like, really? Really? You think he walks around all the time naked? When our kids were little, they'd be running around in the front yard. Naked, until they were 5, 6 years old. Didn't matter. Neighbors had little kids also run around naked. You're little kids. Who cares? Now you do that, take pictures, put them on Facebook, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get a knock on the door for child pornography. I'm not kidding, okay? Gosh. So, they go by a little cemetery. How many graves are in the cemetery? 5 or 6. How many people are in the car? Bailey, Bailey's wife, Bailey's baby, grandmother, June Starr, John Wesley. It's foreshadowing. Yeah, ooh. All right, we'll stop there. So finish this for